Hello and welcome to Hooting Mandrills. I'm Sam.
I'm Jeremy.
Today we're delving into Magic's foundations, the core set to end all core sets, the final realization of WotC's dream of a modern that rotates and a standard that does not, the pineapple under the sea where SpongeBob will live. And we're gonna start off with multicolored cards.
Before we dive in, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe on the video. Our first card is Alesha, who laughs at fate. For a generic black and a red, a legendary creature, human warrior with first strike. Whenever Alesha attacks, put a 1/1 counter on it, and then a raid ability at the beginning of your end step. If you attack this turn, return target creature card with mana value less than or equal to Alesha's power from your graveyard to the battlefield. Alesha starts at a 2/2. Obviously, if you attack with Alesha, is then a 3/3 at least.
Yeah, so this card's a banger. I like this card a lot.
Completely gas.
So there are plenty of pretty good things that are discard outlets to curve into this card in standard. FOMO is a card that we're going to be pointing to a lot because basically any card that says do something good when it attacks is better with FOMO. And they put a lot of things like that in this because it's sort of a learn the basics set. Learn about combat math. Do not miss out learning about math.
Math is important for Magic, folks. I mean, some people say that math is for blockers, and that's true, but you can always stack that advantage to your edge if
math is for attackers too, and Alesha is going to make that math more favorable for you. If she gets to swing twice, and if you play FOMO, discard another 2-drop to the FOMO and play Alesha on turn 3 and have an attack with your 2/3 that isn't disastrous, you are happy.
Well, it could be a 3-drop, right? Because you'll get the 1/1 counter.
Alesha won't attack in that. She does not have haste.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So on when Alesha comes down, you can just get a 2-drop the very first turn and then a 3-drop subsequently, and so on and so on. I mean, you could obviously put a monstrous rage or something on Alesha and then grab a 5-drop at the end step if she lives that long. But yeah, this card is just very good. I could see a million instances where you would want to play this card. Jund looks really good. Any red-black deck would be happy to play. I think that this card is going to be all over Pioneer, all over Standard. I mean, Pioneer is mostly just red-black piles anyway, and this card just
red-black piles that play a discard outlet. Fable of the Mirror Breaker is a 3-drop. It is competing with this card in that way, but...
Well, you get to Fatal Push and Thoughtseize, so usually in red-black you're going to make it past turn 3 unless you have none of your your cards that make the deck work.
Yeah, you can... you can slam this thing on turn... You can play more than 4 3-drops in your Rakdos deck, and you can play this on turn 4 when you've just discarded to Fable, swing with your token, and be pretty happy about what's going on in your life. There's a ringing endorsement for this card. If you play it, you will be pretty happy with what's going on in your life. I don't know if it can live up to that expectation, but the card's very good. I like this card a lot.
At least for the rest of the match that you're playing, you'll feel a little bit of joy from winning.
Even older than Pioneer, we were talking in the Duskmourn Alchemy set review about Fear of Ridicule. This isn't an enchantment creature, but Fable's not looking so hot in Historic right now. The tokens line up really badly against Amped Raptors and shit. It's kind of slow. This card might be a more exciting thing than Fable to be curving your FOMOs and Kamano Faces Kakazans into. It's a pretty good thing to jump with Detective's Phoenix. It suddenly attacks immediately and has 5 power. I don't know what you're getting back in Historic that you 5-drop that you binned in that case, but you might be able to build the deck that way.
There's that Delirium Worm from
that's
a possibility.
That's pretty cute. Yeah, there are things to do with this card. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think this card is one of the best multicolored cards in the entire set, probably. Let's move on though and not just talk about it for the rest of the pod. Okay, our next card is Anthem of Champions. For a green and a white creature enchantment, creatures you control get +1/+1. We see this type of effect kind of a lot, but at 2 cost it's pretty decent. I mean, it's no War Leader's Call or whatever, but it's good. I could see it seeing play.
Yeah, it's 2 is about the rate for this type of Anthem effect to be playable. It is in the colors of the Rabbits deck, which is a go wide deck. Could do something. I don't think it's great, but I think it's a tool that's going to be in Standard forever, and we'll see some play at various points.
Yeah, this isn't going to break the Rabbit deck into tier 1, I don't think, but it's a cool card. Another card that, I don't know, I think in my notes I wrote down this card needs haste. Ashroot Animist. It's 2 generic, a red and a green, for a Lizard Druid 4/4 with Trample. When this creature attacks, another target creature you control gains Trample and gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is this creature's power. So pumping up your other creatures, and potentially getting Valiant triggers, I guess. I don't really think that that's a deck with this card, but it's kind of fun. You know, I think that this is mostly a commander card, but yeah, if it had haste, I would definitely see it in a different light.
I agree that this card needs haste, which is why I put Reckless Stormseeker, a card that is not legal in Standard, has rotated out, but is legal in Pioneer and sees play there on this slide. I almost think this card might be better in Pioneer, where you can like Stormseeker into this, buff it to 5 power and give it haste and then swing. That seems like it might be an okay thing to be doing. It is an attack trigger, so little mallet to the knee. FOMO, fear of missing out on mentioning FOMO in talking about any card that talks about attacking.
About attacking, yeah.
Especially if it's red. All right, Niv-Mizzet Visionary. 4 blue and a red, legendary creature, dragon wizard, 5/5. Ravnica's sharpest mind and its biggest ego. At least until I learn to Planeswalk. This is just in the model of every other Is It Niv that we've ever seen. Flying, you have no maximum hand size. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, you draw that many cards. So you burn face, you draw cards. It does cool things in garbage time.
I think it infinite combos with both other Niv-Mizzets that exist. That's a commander thing. I don't even know. I peripherally saw that and was like, oh, cool, infinite combos in commander. But yeah, whatever, who cares? This this card is unplayable. It costs 6. If you're gonna play anything that costs that much, it should be cost 7 and be Atraxa, right? I don't see a home for this. I don't really think that this is constructed play. I mean, I don't know. People do play maybe in some historic control deck. You'll play 1 copy of this and 1 copy of the other Nivs, and who knows, but
I mean, there are a bunch of big dumb control finishers in this set, and most of them are gonna have the same problem, that you just don't need to play a card like this to have a win con in control. There are just other things going on, and if you untap with this and your deck contains lightning helixes, if you can bear to play Burst Lightning in your removal suite in your Jeskai control deck, whatever. My poor beloved Invasion of Tarkir makes me almost want to like this card. It attacks for exactly enough to knock it over. Invasion creates a body that deals some non-combat damage or increases non-combat damage. This thing makes Invasion hit a little harder while it's waiting in your hand for garbage time, but that's the problem. It's waiting in your hand for garbage time. You just don't really need this kind of effect in control.
And also, Wizards is very careful about direct damage spells that they print, because people hate when burn is too fast. So
burn actually looks decent in Standard, as we'll get to later, but this card is obviously not a part of it.
More commander nonsense. We've got Consuming Aberration for 3 generic, blue and a black. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in your opponent's graveyards. Whenever you cast a spell, each opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land card, then puts those cards into their graveyard. So yeah, I think mill strategy in Standard is pretty unlikely to be viable.
At Worlds, you saw people playing Doomsday Excruciator, Jace, or I've seen people playing Doomsday Excruciator and Rakdos the Muscle. Those aren't really mill strategies.
Those are
more
two-card combos.
That
end up, Jace obviously can win you games in a number of formats by milling out, but it's usually not. I mean, it could also be accompanied by regular mill strategy, but usually it's a combo.
Yeah, Jace is a card you're not really embarrassed to play fairly and maybe enable a mill strategy. This thing also just costs 5 mana, though, and its effect looks flashy, but is probably milling about 3 cards, right? If you're milling until they hit a land. We just talked about how math was important. I could try and figure out what the actual distribution is in a 24 land deck, but about 3 is pretty good heuristic. And so if you compare this to a good mill card like Ruin Crab mills exactly 3 on landfall. Ruin Crab's not legal in Standard, but that's a card that you're actually playing to be good at milling. And this card, you have to do something harder than play a land to mill about the same amount. It also costs 5 mana. It's big, it's cute.
It's a reprint, too.
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
okay.
This card existed before, I believe, and sees no play.
Okay, so I could have saved myself a slide. This card is new, I believe. Kykar, Zephyr Awakener. 2 white and blue, legendary bird wizard, 3/4 flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, choose 1. Exile another target creature you control. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Or create a 1/1 white spirit with flying.
So yeah, flickering not right away, but back at the end step, pretty cool. I mean, there's also the ability to exile a lot of creatures and have ETBs come back in, or if you have not a ton of creatures, you can just make spirits. I think that this card is pretty cool. I don't exactly know what the deck is that's trying to play this in Standard, or...
Yeah, it does a lot of things that are pretty cool and good in Commander. Blinking a thing, I could see a world where Blink is slightly better than a 1/1 Prowess Monk. I think the Spirit is worse, pretty clearly. So comparing this to a card like Monastery Mentor, which is not really even good enough for the Helping Hand decks. I think they sometimes play it as a sideboard juke to be less soft to graveyard hate.
Right, yeah, I mean, a poor Inoculus
you cannot, in fact, Helping Hand this card, so these sort of Mentor-style decks where Mentor isn't quite good enough, don't really have a spot for this card. I think it's mostly a Commander card.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, now we have Progenitus, everybody's another reprint, obviously, but we'll talk
one
about
that I think
anyway.
is worth talking about. It's new to Pioneer. It's an old enough reprint.
So for 2 of each Wooburg, you get
Gigantha non-compliant.
in every color, is a 10/10 legendary creature Hydra avatar, which is kind of cool, I guess, if you need one of your Cavern of Souls that's already on avatar from all of those cards from Duskmoor and all of the Overlords. Yeah, so it's a 10/10 protection from everything. If Progenitus would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal it, Progenitus, and shuffle it into its owner's library instead. So obviously we're looking to cheat this card out in 60 card. I mean, you're probably looking to cheat this card out in Commander as well, but the way that looks is a little different sometimes. It obviously has to compete with other cards that you're trying to cheat out, like Atraxa or Valgavoth, but it has its own flair with protection from everything, where your Atraxa gets removed. Valgavoth a little harder to remove with the Ward sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. But do you want to talk about cheating this card out, Sam?
Sure. And yeah, Valgavoth it's most comparable, I think, to Valgavoth. It doesn't have lifelink, so it doesn't just immediately stabilize you and win you the game the way Atraxa and Valgavoth do. It does shuffle itself back in if it ever gets put in the graveyard, which is maybe appealing for a deck like Transmogrify or Creativity that has to churn in Pioneer, that has to churn through a lot of cards. Put this into play, it's very hard to interact with. for a lot of decks and kills pretty fast. It is, unlike Valgavoth, it is green. In Timeless, you could natural order for this thing, and again, it kills pretty fast. Basically nothing in the format can interact with it. I guess an Edict effect could. You know, it's okay there. When natural order was more of a thing in Timeless, they usually were just going for Titan and trying to win with like Field of the Dead stuff. So I don't know that they would want this effect if they don't even want Atraxa, but it's there. It's big.
Yeah, my thought is that this may be some kind of like sideboard strategy for people trying to cheat out Atraxa and Valgavoth, where protection from everything becomes more valuable than the other abilities that those cards have, which are pretty extensive. So it's difficult to know whether or not this is it or not. We also have Omniscience coming in this set, so I don't know. There will be ways to cheat out things, so maybe you want a number of those, but Omniscience without show and tell, a little difficult.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Omniscience when we get to blue cards, but for now let's move on, and probably move on again very quickly. This is a card to teach new players how keywords work. Swiftblade it's not even bad, but that's what it is. Swiftblade Vindicator. Red and a white, 1/1 human soldier, double strike, vigilance, trample. You might play this. There's not much to say about it.
I might play this myself. I don't know. I would consider this card in standard at least. It's tough. I don't know, because there's also Manifold Mouse already that can give trample to, or can give both double strike and trample to others. But yeah, this card, the red-white in enchantments aggro deck could maybe use this card. Maybe you already just want to play Manifold Mouse because you can make 2 of them if you have 4 mana. But I like this card. I think this card is cool. It's not very flashy or exciting, but
it might be flashier. It might be flashy and exciting. It's just not
much to speak about.
Yeah, we all know what all this does. All right. Zimone, Paradox Sculptor. 2 green and a blue. Legendary creature, human wizard, 1/4. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control. Sure. And activated ability, blue, green, and tap to double the number of each kind of counter on up to 2 target creatures and or artifacts you control. I'm going to use this to talk about one of my big cards to keep in your memory banks for Foundations, which is Agatha's Soul Cauldron. This, like we talked about how we'll be mentioning FOMO's name a lot because there are a lot of things that care about attacking, and oh boy does FOMO make those types of cards better. There are also a lot of cards that are kind of overcosted but have activated abilities that are pretty decent, which means they're potentially interesting to put under a Soul Cauldron. Some of the Cauldron combo decks were already in blue-green, might be already cared about 1/1 counters. This might be worth a copy or 2 there. There's stuff going on here. It's not terrible on rate, like 1/4 for 4 that basically ETB distributes 2 counters.
Yeah, so this card kind of is reminiscent of Varel of the Whole Clade, which was a card I tried to make work before I was even like thinking about, real strategies in Magic, and it's kind of tough. Like the tap to double the number of count. I mean, like this is even worse because it costs 4 mana and then 2 more to double the counters on 2 targets is better than 1, obviously, but I don't know. I don't see this card really making it through. 4 mana is so much. And yeah, I mean, there are some pretty good Agatha Soul Cauldron targets even in some of these new cards. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this card's playable even in standard.
Pretty fringe, certainly. Mostly a commander card. All right, here's a bunch of reprints that are relatively recent, but some of them are cool. I love Immersturm Predator. He's my friend. I don't know if he'll be good in current standard. The standard that he was in, he sort of made Indestructible matter because the most popular exiling removal was Vanishing Verse, which he dodged due to being multicolored. But
now
I love him.
Everything's
He's my friend.
Removal.
I love Immersturm Predator. I'm going to try it in some number in Aracta Magicka sacrifice deck, no one can stop me.
Yeah, I am a pretty big fan of Halana and Elena partners. I think that card, it was a lot of fun when it was in Standard, but once again, Standard has to be so fast now that like big red-green as a strategy, I don't really see this card as being playable, but I want it to be. Moldatha, there's a lot of Delirium stuff, so maybe there's some kind of Moldatha strategy in Big Sultai, but 6 in Standard is like unbelievable.
Maelstrom Pulse, card to keep in your memory banks. Wilt Leaf Liege, if you're playing Obstinate Baloth to try and get the Liliana gamers, you might consider this in that spot. Some people will desperately try to make Thousand Year Storm work and eventually to just put it back into their commander decks where it belongs.
Yeah, I mean, Prime Speaker, great commander card as well. Impossible to play in Constructed. 6 costs for this. I just... you already having to have a powerful creature in play when Prime Speaker comes down. Impossible. 6 cost things are an after the sunfall kind of world. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if any of these cards are gonna see a whole ton of play in Standard or even Pioneer. They're already in. Yeah, Historic and Timeless.
Most of these were already in Pioneer. Most or all of these, I think, were already in Pioneer. Reprints that are older than that, I've been trying to give their own spotlight. But let's so that's rare and mythics, at least the ones that have been spoiled at the time of recording. We might have to append a few more to the end, but let's move on to some commons and uncommons that I think are interesting. Start off with a pretty good one. Boros Charm, new to Arena, though it's legal in Pioneer, and going to be in Standard forever, dealing 4 to so many faces.
This card, absolute banger, honestly. I mean, like, the difference between 3 and 4 is a lot, but then it also has these other modes of, you know, giving indestructible or double strike, you know, like giving your slick shot show off double strike. That's 6 damage on one card, you know, so that's more than 4 if you feel safe about it, you know.
Also, briefly mention another uncommon that's a new one actually from Foundations, but one that made, I thought, more sense to talk about in this context than give its own slide in red is Boltwave. 3 damage to each opponent. Lava Spike that dodges Leyline of Sanctity. Not that that's a relevant thing in Standard, but a burn card that you're not embarrassed to put in your deck. Lightning Helix is also here.
Right.
There's stuff going on.
So for the next 5 years, burn will be in Standard, essentially, with these 2 cards. I mean, I guess they can, if there's nothing else, then maybe not.
So many different people with different faces from all across the world will be playing Standard Magic over the course of the next half decade, and all of those faces will eat a Boros Charm and die at least once.
As it should be. No, I mean, we want balance, but I think that it's good that burn is back in Magic. It's been sort of like, I mean, it's been a sort of a while before any meta has had a real burn deck, and now it seems a lot more likely.
Burn was a popular deck in Timeless for a while. I think largely as a budget consideration.
I was playing it, so.
Yeah, it kind of got chased away by the energy decks, which just gained so much life. It was usually in Rakdos, but that was because Boros Charm wasn't on Arena. I think there would have been red-white variants if it had been. But yeah, cool card, fun card. Next we have Dryad Militant. Green-white hybrid mana, 2/1 Dryad Soldier. If an instant or sorcery would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Not world-shattering. There are a lot of Savannah Lions in Standard now, and several more coming in Foundations. But if either of its creature types are interesting, it could fill that 1-drop slot, or if you want just a little bit of splash hate for like the Oculus decks, you might play this over Recruiter or whatever other 1-mana 2/1.
Yeah, a little risky to depend on your, like, as a sideboard card, your graveyard hate. But if it already slots into your deck, like you're already along that strategy, I could see it, just like if you can already include it.
Yeah, I don't think you play this over other sideboard graveyard hate, but I think that in some decks that just care about having any 1-drop that meets certain conditions, if Oculus is really popular, this is a card that might be better than other Savannah Lions.
Next up, we have Empyrean Eagle. Empyrean Eagle? No, okay. For a generic, a white and a blue. For a 2/3 flyer, other creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. So a flying lord is kind of cute.
So this one's a reprint, but it might be standard playable. There are a fair number of little 1/1 flyers that see some play in standard. Spyglass Siren, we've got Spectral Sailor now coming to standard in Foundations. Fairy Mastermind.
Deep Cavern Bat being the other card, not exactly in the right colors, but it's very powerful little flyer.
Yeah, you might reach for this card once in a while. A card that you probably won't reach for, at least not until Haughty Djinn rotates, is Enigma Drake, which is just Haughty Djinn, but red and a blue instead of double blue, and doesn't cost reduce your instants and sorceries. But it's a card, it's there.
Okay, we have a panda in a Fiendish Panda for 2 generic white and a black for a bear demon 3/2. Whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. When this creature dies, return another target non-bear creature card with mana value less than or equal to this creature's power from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is fun. I mean, demons, after Worlds, we saw Unholy Annex. I mean, like both the top 2 decks plus much of the field are playing this card. This is
the new Fable.
Yeah.
So any card with the line with demon in its type line is a card that you have to consider could maybe be playable, even if it doesn't necessarily look like that otherwise. We will talk about another another card that looks a lot better because it has the demon type line when we get to black in Abyssal Harvester. But so if you play Unholy Annex on 3, play this on 4, and if it lives to your end step, you're
draining.
Yeah, you're draining. That's going to trigger its Johnny's Pridemate effect. It's going to be a 4/3. That means it can get back not just an Abyssal Harvester if one is in your graveyard, but the good 4-drop demons in Bloodletter and Archfiend that you might be playing.
I think it's a little tough still. I don't know that this, because you need so many 4-drops in your demons deck already with Archfiend, and potentially, I don't know how many decks are playing both Archfiend and
I
Bloodletter.
think usually Bloodletter is just the ones that are playing Slasher.
The Slasher, yeah, to do the combo.
This might just be a better 4-drop than Bloodletter, though.
You think this? Oh, if you're not playing Slasher.
If you're being drawn into Orzhov anyway, maybe you're trying to play Caretaker's Talent, which is cute with both the Harvester and the Ritual Chamber. We'll talk a little bit more about in black. This might be your other 4-drop demon to turn on your Annex.
Right, and there's quite a bit of life gain possible in Orzhov that's pretty powerful in general. You could have a quasi-life gain strategy in your deck as well with this card. So maybe. I don't think that there's zero chance that this card is played. I think that it will be played, but I'm not sure that it's necessarily optimal. All right, so next up we have Koma World Eater, 3 generic, 2 green, 2 blue, legendary creature serpent. Cannot be countered, trample ward 4. Whenever Koma deals combat damage to a player, create 4 3/3 blue serpent creature tokens named Koma's Coil, and it's an 8/12, so big old boy. I love this card, kind of, but obviously it's not playable in Constructed. I'm sure Commander players will have a lot of fun creating all those serpents, though.
Yeah, basically. Also, Note that the completed Koma from the March of the Machines storyline, Koma completion, has still never shown up, and at this point really only can in a core set or a Modern Horizons set. But that's not the Koma we're looking at today. It's big, it can't be countered. Lots of things can't be countered by the time you get to 7 mana. You can find a Cavern of Souls. That line is probably not too relevant until Lost Caverns of Ixalan rotates. Even then, I guess Tyrannex Rex
will also be rotating more importantly.
The card that it most directly competes with now for this sort of slot, which isn't really a slot, but if you were looking for a big uncounterable thing in these colors, you would probably play Tyrannex Rex, which is similarly big and hard to kill, but has haste.
Haste being the most important keyword, yeah. I mean, sometimes you see the Rex get sideboarded in one of, but yeah, let's just move on along. This card is sick. Elenda, Saint of Dusk, 2 colorless, white-black, legendary creature, Vampire Knight, lifelink, hexproof from instance, so not quite, but kind of like our favorite 13/13. But anyway, more text on this card. As long as your life total is greater than your starting life total, Elenda gets +1/+1 and has menace. Elenda gets an additional +5/+5 as long as your life total is at least 10 greater than your starting life total, and Elenda is a 4/4.
Yeah, this blanks a whole lot of removal. Obviously, you can get got by Sunfall, Leyline Binding, Edicts, any sorcery speed removal spell that you might be playing. But blanking about probably over half of the removal that you'd want to kill it with is the real deal. It's also not that hard to turn the second ability on. Even if your dedicated life gain looks like a viable thing to be doing, there have been good cards for it floating around for a while, but even if you're just playing this as your 4-drop mid-range threat, a lot of mid-range matchups, life total doesn't go down that much. You trade off removal spells, resources, maybe hit them with a bat once, and oh look, you're at 21 on turn 4. And also noteworthy, sort of like the old Volta Tarmogoyf thing, this is going to teach the new players coming in with Foundations about how state-based effects work. If this is in combat with a 4/4 while you're at 17, the 4/4 will not trade with it. The lifelink as part of damage will put the controller to 21, and it will be a 5/5 by the time it's checking to see if it should be dead, and it will learn that it should not be. Yeah, powerful card, powerful in dedicated life gain.
Orzhov.
Yeah, and any sort of Orzhov mid-range deck could be interested in this. Any sort of Orzhov deck could be interested in this as a sideboard card for matchups where just a big, hard-to-kill lifelinker is a huge problem, which there are many such matchups. Really, really powerful card.
Last but not least, we have our reprints. We have one rare additionally added on as we've tacked on to the end of this recording, which is a Commander Elf.
Yeah, that's also why we talked about 2 rares before now, is that we recorded the rest of this video on Thursday, and these were either not spoiled or not in the gallery at the time. But yeah, some of these cards are already in Standard.
Ruby and Balmor, mostly.
Yeah, Cloud Blazer's seen play in the past. Its days are probably behind it. Mortify could be a good, just pay a premium for flexibility.
Sideboard card.
Maybe a sideboard card.
Yeah, but there's so many enchantments in Standard right now that I could potentially see it.
Savage Ventmaw is a card that we both love that's not good enough for Constructed.
Wasn't really good enough for Constructed when it was in Standard on its own, but
I do think it's pretty consequential that Ruby is going to be in Standard forever. I think that her stock is going up with Foundations in ways that we'll talk about when in the context of other cards later in the video, but cool to see. And that brings us to the end of Multicolor. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and see you in the next one as we go around the color wheel.